She was drunk when she confessed. I was never attracted to you, she slurred, her words cutting through the haze of the evening like a cold knife. I can't stop seeing other men. My heart dropped, each syllable a slap to the face. Her words echoed in my mind as she passed out beside me, unaware of the devastation she'd just unleashed. In that moment, I made my decision. By sunrise I would be gone. No notes. No goodbyes. My name is Phil, and for as long as I can remember, I've always believed that hard work could fix anything. It's how I was raised. Work hard, put your head down, and everything else falls into place. I thought that was the key to a successful life, and it guided me through my marriage too. I worked tirelessly, believing that every extra hour at the office, every sacrifice I made, was a step toward building the life I promised her. I woke up early, hustled all day, and by the time I came home, I was too drained to do much beyond offering a simple good night. But I convinced myself it was all worth it. I was doing it for us. I was making sure she'd never have to worry about anything. Whenever I had a moment to spare, I focused on her. How could I make her happy? How could I give her the life she deserved? I brought her gifts when I traveled for work, planned weekend getaways to make up for lost time, always striving to make her feel special. It wasn't always perfect, but I told myself that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up and trying. At least, that's what I thought. Looking back, I realize I may have misunderstood the meaning of love. But at the time I was sure. I thought if I worked harder, I could fix whatever was wrong. Lately though, things had felt off. She seemed distant, preoccupied and unresponsive. At first I dismissed it. We'd only been married for 2 years. Maybe we were just adjusting to the routine of married life. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Still, I didn't want to believe it. I told myself she was just stressed, maybe going through a phase. I thought if I worked a little harder, showed her how much I cared, things would go back to normal. I was convinced that love and effort could fix anything. How wrong I was. When the tension between us became unbearable, I decided to act. A romantic dinner, I thought, might help us reconnect. I spent the entire afternoon preparing. I cooked her favorite meal, chicken parmesan with garlic mashed potatoes, something I hadn't made since our first date. I set the table with candles, dimmed the lights just right, and picked a playlist of slow songs she used to love. It was my way of saying I see you. I miss you. I'm trying. When she walked through the door and saw the setup, she looked surprised. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something. Maybe gratitude? She kissed my cheek, sat down and smiled. The evening started off well. We ate, and the conversation flowed easily. She complimented the food, joked about how I was secretly a better cook than her. And for the first time in months, I heard her laugh. A genuine laugh. In that moment, I allowed myself to believe maybe we could find our way back to each other. But as the evening wore on and she drank more wine, things began to shift. Her behavior became subtler at first. She leaned back in her chair, her expression loosening, her words coming more slowly. I didn't think much of it until she set her glass down, looked at me and said, "You're a nice guy. You make sure I'm okay. That's why I'm here with you." I froze. What did she mean? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She laughed softly, almost pityingly. "I've never really been attracted to you," she said, her tone casual, like she was recounting an ordinary story. Not in that way. Her words hit me like a freight train. I was stunned, not knowing what to say. She continued, leaning forward, resting her chin on her hand. She described her type. Someone rougher, with a darker vibe. Someone who wasn't afraid to break the rules. The exact opposite of me. Then she casually dropped the bombshell. "When I met him, my type." I just couldn't resist. Her voice trailed off. But I didn't need her to finish. I knew what she was saying. She had cheated. I sat there, nodding along like a fool, as she continued to spill her truths. Each word she said shattered me more than the last. My chest tightened, a weight pressing down on me. I couldn't breathe, but I didn't show it. I kept my face calm, composed, even though inside I was falling apart. This wasn't an apology. It wasn't regret. It was just a drunken justification. A pathetic attempt to explain why she betrayed me, as if I needed to understand. And in that moment, I realized there was nothing to say. I didn't need to yell to fight. I just needed to let her finish, and then walk away. Fighting with her would give her the satisfaction of justifying herself. She didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve closure. What she deserved was to feel the consequences of what she'd done. When I went to bed that night, I didn't feel anger. I felt clarity. Lying there in the dark, listening to her soft snores, I knew that there was no going back. Her words kept repeating in my mind. How I wasn't her type. How she stayed with me because I was safe and nice. How she had found what she wanted elsewhere. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the casual way she spoke of it. No remorse, no real feeling. Just an empty admission that she had chosen someone else. By the time the sun rose, I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't be there when she woke up. I'm not a man who acts on impulse. When I make a decision, I make it with precision. That morning, I left like I always did. Quietly, deliberately. No sign that anything was different. But this time I wasn't coming back. The first call I made was to my lawyer. I told him to prepare the divorce papers, and to include everything needed to sever my ties to her. Then I called my accountant, a sharp man who quickly began liquidating my shares in our joint investments. By the end of the day, my accounts were empty, and I had full control over my assets. I called my family next. I didn't give them the details. I didn't need to. But I made one thing clear. Don't entertain her. Don't share my whereabouts. If she calls, tell her nothing. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, without anyone cushioning her fall. Finally, I left a message with my lawyer to deliver to her. When she inevitably tried to reach me, she would get the divorce papers soon. No explanations. No apologies. Just the cold, hard reality of what she had lost. Weeks later, the papers were served. I heard through my lawyer that she tried to reach out, calls, emails, even showing up at his office. But I didn't respond. She begged for an explanation. But what could I possibly say? She already knew everything. At first, she didn't want to sign the papers. She hesitated, dragging her feet. Maybe she thought she could somehow salvage what we had. Or maybe she just didn't want to lose the stability I provided. But when she saw the financial settlement, she caved. I wasn't surprised. After all, she had always prioritized herself. And just like that, the chapter was closed. When I walked out of that marriage, I wasn't thinking about what would happen to her. I just wanted to be free. Free from the lies, the disrespect, and the complete lack of care for me as a person. I thought, let her have the life she wanted. At first, it seemed like she did. She enjoyed the freedom, the single life, and the financial security that came with the settlement. But I knew she would eventually realize that the life she thought she wanted wasn't all it seemed. And that in the end would be her real punishment. I had worked tirelessly, building a life for us piece by piece. She got her share when we divorced. And from that moment, she dove headfirst into her usual distractions. Nights out with friends, new clothes, and of course new men. I even heard her laughing about how she was finally living the life she thought she deserved. But here's the thing about people like her. They never think beyond the moment. She believed that freedom meant doing whatever she wanted without any consequences. But life doesn't work that way. Eventually it catches up with you. And sure enough, one of those so-called freedoms caught up with her in the most unexpected and impactful way. She ended up pregnant. I found out through a mutual acquaintance, who couldn't resist sharing the gossip. Apparently it wasn't planned, not that I expected it to be. The father of the child disappeared as soon as she told him. No calls, no texts, just gone. She was left to deal with it all on her own. But that wasn't the end of her troubles. She burned through the settlement money, as if it meant nothing. By the time the baby came, she was deep in debt. To make matters worse, she had to sell our old house, well, her house by then. It was the last piece of our shared life, and even that slipped away. And as for her friends, what was left of them? They weren't there when she needed them most. You see, people like her only attract others who are just like them. Shallow, selfish, and only around when things are fun. But when she started asking for help, for money, for babysitting, for someone to cry to, those friends disappeared one by one. I guess even her best stories couldn't entertain them anymore. She got exactly what she thought she wanted, freedom. But that kind of freedom comes with a cost. She lost everything that mattered to her. because she never valued it in the first place. And the truth is, I didn't feel sorry for her. I wasn't sitting somewhere plotting her downfall, but I also didn't care. She was a closed chapter in my life, a chapter one had long ago let go of. Some people think they're escaping something when in reality, they're running straight into a wall. That's what she did, she ran. And when she hit that wall, there was no one left to catch her. Years went by, and my life moved on. Not in some flashy dramatic way, but steadily, quietly. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had rebuilt myself in ways I didn't even know I needed to. And then one day she found me. I was sitting at home by the window, lost in a book, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door, there she was. She looked the same. Not bad, but polished, carrying herself with that same air of confidence I once admired. Her eyes met mine, steady, searching, as though she was waiting for me to react, to show some sign of recognition. But seeing her again stirred nothing in me except a cold, quiet detachment. I had no anger left for her, no desire to relive the past. I didn't know how she had tracked me down, and at that moment I didn't care. All I felt was disgust. She stood there hesitating, as if waiting for my permission to speak. I didn't give it. Finally she started talking, her voice cracking as she spoke. "I've been trying to find you for years," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to tell you how sorry I am. I made a terrible mistake. And I've paid for it every single day since." She paused, hoping for some kind of response, but I didn't give her the satisfaction. I just leaned back against the doorframe, watching her squirm. "I thought I could have everything," she continued, her hands trembling as she clasped them together. "I thought I could find excitement somewhere else and still keep you. But I was wrong. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone." Her words spilled out, desperate and messy. She told me about the failures in her life, the broken relationships, the debts, the loneliness. She even admitted that she was left pregnant and alone. Then she looked at me, tears streaming down her face, and said, "Please, I need you. I've never stopped needing you." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her, making sure she understood this wasn't some moment of reconciliation. This wasn't a conversation. It was the end of one. "You made your choice," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You were never attracted to me, remember? I wasn't your type. So go find your type, and see if he wants you now." She flinched as if my words had physically struck her. But I didn't stop there. "I don't care what you regret. I don't care how much you've suffered. That's your burden to carry, not mine. Don't ever show your face to me again." And with that, I stepped back, closed the door, and walked away without a second thought. I didn't need her explanations, her apologies, or her regret. That chapter of my life was over, and there was no reason to reopen it. As I walked away, I thought about the man I had become. Losing her had torn me apart in ways I didn't know I could break, but it also forced me to rebuild. I'm still rebuilding, and I know I'll keep doing so. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give to someone who betrays you is your absence. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for yourself is to walk away and never look back. In losing her, I found myself. And that realization was the only closure I would ever need. So let me ask you, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Honestly, think about it for a second. You've just sat through a dinner you planned to bring back some spark to your marriage, only for your wife, the woman you vowed to spend your life with, to tell you, between sips of wine, that you're not her type. She even had the nerve to laugh as she explained how she'd been with other men behind your back. What would you do? Would you stay and fight for someone who doesn't value you? Or would you walk away? Look, I'm not here to tell anyone what's right or wrong. But let me share something I've learned the hard way. If you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, where someone shows you they don't respect you or your love, you have to stop making excuses for them. Don't let their lack of appreciation chip away at your self-worth. The truth is, people treat you how you let them treat you. If they can step all over you once, they'll do it again. And it only gets worse over time. Leaving isn't easy, I get that. It's painful, it's messy, and yeah, it's lonely at first. But you have to think long term. Maybe you're scared of what happens after. Scared of starting over, of being alone. But let me tell you something. Being alone is a hell of a lot better than being with someone who makes you feel like you're not enough. And when you finally walk away from someone who doesn't see that, you open the door for something better. Even if that better thing is just finding peace within yourself.